Hockey Podcast. Christmas Jones is a terrible name, but Famke Janssen's name was Xenia Onatop, and that's how she almost kills him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She kills another guy.
Yeah.
Onatop.
Anyways, welcome to the Handsome Hockey Podcast, friends. This is episode 97. We are closing in on the Century Club, which is... I don't even have a joke for. We've been doing this a while.
Yep. We're going to try and bring you up to on a top on all of the things going on in the NHL these days, as well as a big old PWHL win and the, I don't know, hate to see you go, but nice to see you leave kind of thing with Joe Pavelski.
Yeah. Oh, big God. Exactly. Perfect timing. Right as we start the podcast. Yeah. Yeah. Joe Pavelski has been hanging around Dallas for the last 4 seasons, I think. 3 seasons.
Feels like 40.
Yeah. No, that's just his age. I was convinced that he was ruined. Like he was done when he went to Dallas.
Oh yeah. Kind of thinking like, maybe you'll ride out your career as a bit player.
Yeah. And he had signed a relatively solid deal. I think it was $5 million a year or something like that. And humble pie, like all crow, whatever, lemons, whatever you want me to eat. Totally wrong on that. Pavelski's been awesome for his entire career, but in Dallas especially.
Whatever I want you to eat. There's a Jamie Benn joke in there somewhere.
No.
Anywho, yeah, when he went over there, you had seen Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin kind of like skate around being shells of themselves in that team for a while. So you sort of thought, okay, you're going to do that too. And then it seemed like he raised everybody's game along with his.
You're getting embarrassed by this dude who can tip a puck in from center ice.
Yeah, right. like imagine you're a perfectly serviceable professional goalie and you've like put in your dues, you've been booed on home ice but come back from that, made the big club, and then one day there's just this ridiculous like undersized forward with gray hair tipping pucks past you right in front of your just totally feckless defenseman, and then he does again and again, and the old man has ruined your day worse than if he were a politician and you were a young woman in a southern state.
Like, by the end of the game, your wife has left you like, look what you've done.
Yeah, he's kind of like an old man that dive bombs your social group and just holds court and takes over. That's what he did with Dallas. Yeah, his name is Joe Pavelski, and he didn't win a Stanley Cup, unfortunately. I think everyone had him on the old guy without a cup lists as like number 1 with a bullet, but he did manage to win an NCAA championship at Wisconsin. He was part of just one of those ridiculously good Wisconsin teams in the early 2000s. One of 6 players to have 3 65-point seasons after age 37.
The other 5 being Gordie Howe.
Somewhere, a lot of people, probably including his wife, have been probably quietly cheering because they've been expecting and hoping for him to kick his addiction to hockey for a long time now.
As a 40-year-old, I gotta say, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to kick that. You'd never want the adrenaline rush to go away. Like, I'm not an adrenaline junkie guy. Like, I don't need to parachute unless it's parachute pants. Like, I don't need to ride a bull or anything silly like that.
But tipping a puck perfectly, the way that Joe Pavelski did, is like one of the biggest adrenaline rushes available to a hockey forward.
Like, from the tips of your fingers, like down your spine, right out your toes, you feel that. It's like getting electrocuted, basically.
But in a good way.
In a good way. I just wanted to point out real quick that Gordie Howe had 10 seasons of 65 plus point after his 37th birthday.
Oh, yeah. He makes it difficult to like accurately categorize modern players because of he just was such a ridiculous.
Including at age 40, 103 points in 76 games.
In the NHL.
In the NHL with the Red Wings.
So, got to get the question that I'll just spring on you out of the blue, but we looking at a Hall of Fame candidate?
Absolutely.
You think so?
Absolutely. Yeah. He's got the numbers. He was always like, he was a captain in San Jose for a long time. Wasn't he? Was he the captain in San Jose? Or was that Joe?
Ooh. Didn't they all sort of like get because there was some.
Well, I know Couture got it after they left.
I think Pavelski was a captain for a while. I think Joe was, and then they sort of like took it away from him, but he was an A for a while. And then
honestly, I don't know.
Because I thought there was a big deal about taking away the captaincy from Joe.
Dude's got 1,000 points, played what, 20, almost 20 seasons? Yeah, almost 20 seasons.
Yeah, 1,405 games.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's 535 goals, 638 assists.
Plus, like, there's a lot of feels in there. Like, he was a good dude. You know, always put his best foot forward, like never put his foot in his mouth.
Yeah, genuinely seemed like a likable guy.
Yeah.
Looking at Adjusted Hockey's kind of Hall of Fame verdict, they think he's like a borderline in player, it seems like. According to them, they think he's like the 53rd best player in the era. Probably like number 84 forward all time. They said, according to them, he tops out at number 7 in NHL forwards. Like that was his best year. I don't know if that's power rankings, power feelings, actual like statistical.
I've got power feelings.
We know.
Yeah. If you've listened to this podcast before, you know that this guy's got power.
Power forward with power feelings, occasionally power bottom. This Adjusted Hockey, their like cutoff for qualified is 250 points, and they inner circle is like 340 something in the Hockey Hall of Fame, and they put him at 249, whereas their borderline starts at like 220, 235, and they say 210 is Hall of Very Good. So it kind of reflects that he seems like he's in, but he didn't really ever win a major award. He wasn't the leg lamp from A Christmas Story. And there's like 14 retired forwards ahead of him, kind of in line. I don't know. It's like he's trying to get into a really hot wine bar in Portland, but he might actually do it.
I think he does it. I think there's enough feels in there that he gets in.
Looking back at captains, Joe Thornton was captain of the Sharks for 4 years after Rob Blake got 1 year, and Marlowe had been a captain for 5 years. And then 14-15, they don't have a captain. They go with all of them as alternates, and then also add Marc-Edouard Vlasic, and then
Marc-Edouard.
Yeah, and then Pavelski's captain for the next 4 years.
Okay. Speaking of awards, there is a first ever Walter Cup champion, the Walter Cup, which is again the most poorly named trophy in all of sports.
Yeah, it's named after a man, so it's got to be a cup.
A rich white guy who is rich. Cool.
You missed my veiled dick joke.
Oh no, I was there. I was on another train. Sorry, bud. This was won by the Minnesotans, which is applicable because A, the teams in the PWHL don't have names this year, and B, there were a shit ton of Minnesotans on that team.
I think they should just run with it.
Yeah, there was like 18 of them or something, like some shit.
Right, like talk about fidelity to a place far and away that is not possible in any other like sports league.
Yeah, I'll get into that in just a little bit, but like they started the playoffs on a bender of mediocrity, losing 5 games in a row to get before the playoffs. The only reason they made the playoffs is because Ottawa lost on the last night of the season.
Love when that
allowed Minnesota to stay in.
Fucking love when that happens.
Ottawa, surprisingly enough, led the league in fans this year in attendance.
Yeah, which is impressive for them. I mean,
well,
especially considering that Montreal was competing with them neck and neck and set record after record after record, and then like Ottawa beat them, I think, on aggregate.
Yeah, on average fans. Yeah, well, they played at where the Ottawa 67s play. I can't remember.
Right, a lot of it is chalked up
and
to.
So they had a home all season. Minnesota was down 2-0 in a best of 5 series to Toronto before winning 3 in a row. And then
that must have been extra awful for Toronto hockey fans. They were up to 3-0.
Yeah.
Or 2-0.
I mean, where have we seen this before? Boston, then they beat Boston in the championship in the Walter Cup Finals.
I maintain that it's actually named after one of our local street cats named Walter.
Yes. They beat Boston 3-0 in the last game. This was, as we talked about last time, after winning in game 4 and then not winning.
Winning, unwinning, and then losing.
If you looked at it after the game, there's 2 ways. After game 4, there's 2 ways it can go, right? Minnesota is utterly defeated after the letdown of winning and then being told that it's no goal and goes back to Boston and collapses. The other side of it is Minnesota infuriated by thinking they've won and being told no and then losing, can't win the cup on home ice and says, let's shut up Boston. And that's what they did. They beat the shit out of Boston.
Yeah, they controlled a whole lot of that game from the get-go. There was a portion of the second period where Boston started to get it together, but then Minnesota got their second goal, and it was just like that took the air out of Boston to a certain extent. They definitely clawed back a little bit. They seemed to be more active and engaged, and then Kendall Coyne just turned on the Jets and just smokes a good back check attempt and makes it 3-0, puts the icing on the cake, and just kind of made it like fait accompli with 8 minutes left, I think, something like that.
I don't think I've ever seen Hilary Knight get erased from a game like she was. And that's not me like poo-pooing Hilary Knight in any way. That's me saying Minnesota did fucking work. I think they put on 44 shots on Aaron Frankel and only gave up 17. You and I were commenting that while we were watching that, it seems like one of these goalies has had a little bit more work than the other. And then so they gave her the player of the game.
She absolutely deserved. I mean, the only kind of cruddy thing about that was they zoomed in on her giving her the award while she's on the bench after being pulled
with her helmet off.
With her team down. I mean, smart media presentation thing, but also it's not like she was looking very happy at that juncture. But it was a complete drubbing by Minnesota, and they deserve to win. Hats off to Boston. They, battled back through all sorts of adversity, but it seemed like Minnesota's speed and possession ability was just something they couldn't equal. Like you talk about, who did you say?
Hilary Knight.
You talk about Hilary Knight sort of getting erased in a way, and like similar to sort of how a power forward like Chris Kreider got erased in that series. Like if you have enough speed, you can take away the power forwards, and that seemed like what was happening. Enough
speed and are willing to play a heavy game despite not maybe being heavy. There's an interesting parallel between those late Minnesota Wildcaps teams or Whitecaps teams and all the speed they had, especially at forward, and how effective this team was with that speed and that forecheck and just punishing Boston in their own zone. Every mistake was turned into a scoring chance. It was a bludgeoning.
Their real reward should be the league just bestowing the old Whitecaps name and logo on the team.
Please, also, if
make it purple, that's fine. Minnesota works in purple.
Yeah.
Like purple works there. We've already established this across many sports.
Yeah. If anything, like the Whitecaps and the Pride are the two teams that should have their names restored. Like we know the PWHL owns those copyrights. And I get it. Like, there's probably some people who are in the PWHPA who are like, no, we don't want to go back to the PHF. Blah, 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 blah. But like, those are great names.
Yeah, and logos and just full sets of branding that worked. But I don't know. That's a dead horse that we don't necessarily need to keep beating.
I'll beat so many dead horses. I don't give a shit. Horses, you line those dead horses up, I'll slap them in the mouth.
You give me Secretariat. You exhume him.
Give me 8 bells.
We got a couple more kind of just notes and observations on the PWHL stuff, but
one of the things I really liked about Minnesota, like before the game, they rented out an Irish pub in Lowell. So like, and they were like, win or lose, we're going there, and it'll either be sad beers or it'll be not sad beers. And they were not sad beers. So they rented out this pub. They had this huge jubilant celebration. At one point, Kendall Coyne Schofield jumps up on the bar because she couldn't get anybody's attention because it was so loud.
And also she's not very tall.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. She, like, between her and her husband, you have a regular sized human.
Right.
And so like that was really awesome to hear. And you hear like some of the women decided, I'm not going to bed tonight. And so they just kind of kept it going back at the hotel. A couple of the players went out to get Dunkin' Donuts in the morning for the entire team. Like just some really cool.
They did the Bill Walton and just hung out in Larry Bird's kitchen listening to vinyl all night.
I hope so. Yeah. They like those are the kind of stories that you get from the women's side of the game that you don't necessarily ever get with like even embedded NHL reporters. Like they're not at the bar after the game hearing about this. Like
sometimes.
Well, you heard it a lot in like the 90s and 80s.
Sure.
But we didn't have the internet then. So like we weren't getting those stories like 2 days after the championship game.
Yeah, now we're back in the no fun zone.
Exactly. And now, so I was reading an article in The Athletic by Joe Smith, who was once a Tampa Bay reporter, but now does the Wild and the Minnesotans. And he's got all these quotes from Natalie Darwitz, who, like every GM in the PWHL, built their team from scratch. Mm-hmm. And Natalie, in a hurry. And Natalie did a really smart thing. She's in Minnesota. She's got tons of Minnesota women's hockey players. And knowing that some of them were not going to be making a lot of money, $35K is not a lot of money, even in the Midwest. So she targeted Minnesotan women, not only because there's a shit ton of good Minnesota hockey players, but also because like they wouldn't be as drastically impacted by having to move and then being paid $35K, right?
Right. Yeah. And not just Minnesota, but like the surrounding states. Like there's so many feeder schools and things like that. Yeah. When you have a professional league that you're starting up, that's a brilliant kind of logistical coup. I mean, she sort of put together like a PWHL version of the Beauty League, which is just all of like Minnesotan hockey talent, and they just play in that summer league.
Yeah. And so they win the cup, the Walter Cup.
Walter.
Wow. Walter. They win if we're calling it after the cat, the Walter. They win the Walter Cup, and they surprise Natalie Darwitz with this awesome gift, which is that she's been fired.
Thanks. Good job. Do the press stuff and Go home.
Yeah.
Indefinitely forever.
Go back to Minnesota where you've done all of these great things and clean out your desk. The Minneapolis Star-Tribune is reporting that Darwitz is out due to conflict between herself, the coach Ken Klee, and several veteran players, of which Kendall Coyne Schofield is one. KCS. I'm gonna call her KCS. Do you think that's okay, or should I say that? Nah, we'll call her Kendall Coyne Schofield.
Yeah, you can call her KCS.
Yeah, KCS. If I can say PLD for Pierre Luc Dubois.
Yeah, or KBS for Kentucky Bourbon Stout.
Yeah,
why not?
So KCS. I was pissed off, but a lot of hockey people were pissed off as well. And I'm not hockey people. I just play one on the radio. Was kind of instrumental in just like the absorbing of the PHF and the death of the PHF. And she came out and was like, women have finally built a league for women, not realizing that a dude owns all of it. And there was already a women's league that had been in a lot of ways built by women functioning.
Mm-hmm. But hey, they can bring out Billie Jean King like the animatronic Pope.
Well, hopefully Billie Jean King's not saying homophobic things behind quote unquote closed doors and having to apologize. I have a hard time believing Billie Jean King is saying homophobic things at all.
Yeah, unlikely.
You have to wonder exactly what happened behind the scenes, and I'm sure we'll get some of that as time unfolds. But that's absurd.
Maybe we won't. I mean, professional tensions in sports is a tale as old as time. I mean, you have like Buddy Ryan and Mike Ditka wanting to kill themselves or kill each other the entire time that they were coaching together, but they produced greatness while they were at odds. And like,
to be fair, Buddy Ryan wanted to kill pretty much everybody.
Yeah, true. And
with his bare hands.
But Mike Ditka was just too big for him.
Ditka was a huge dude.
They like kind of let her do the celebration and trophy stuff and press tour, and then kicked her to the curb in a, I don't know, reasonable time frame.
It wasn't in a reasonable time frame. Alana Kloss's speech before handing out the MVP trophy to Tyler Heiss. Like, this took a day and a half.
Yeah, Tyler Heiss is just like going through like 6 different versions of like fake happy face, sad eyes.
She read Dante's Inferno front to back while waiting for this speech to fucking end. She's a tennis player. So, like, what does she know about hockey speeches? You know what you know about hockey speeches? You get them the fuck over with, and you give the girl your glass ass trophy too. Like, it's not even silverware; it's glass.
Yeah,
it's because they spent so much fucking money on the Walter Cup.
Which was wasn't that also a big
no, it was made by Tiffany's.
Oh yeah, it did a big Tiffany's box. I thought that was kind of cool.
I thought that was cool, but apparently you can't afford, with your like $900 billion you've got, you can't afford a real trophy for the playoff MVP. Give me a fucking break. You know what? I would give them a break by dropping that glass ass trophy on the ice and forgetting about it. Like,
it would be really funny to put the Stanley Cup in like a giant, like in one of those giant PBR boxes that you see for sale now. Have you seen this?
No.
It's a PBR. I think it's 180 case.
Oh, fuck me. Who's got that kind of liver?
I mean, I think they assume you have friends, but
I could almost guess that the people buying these cases are not the type of people who drink with friends.
Yes, PBR is
they're the people with a lot of refrigerator space.
180 pack of beer, equivalent to 17 gallons. But these things look fucking incredible. They're like $95 for 180 pack. I guess it's 180 for anniversary of the winning of the Blue Ribbon.
Oh,
for which the brand.
I gotta see a picture of these.
Oh, it's great.
Oh wow,
right? It's gorgeous.
How do you get that out of the store?
I assume they give you a hand truck
and a truck.
Yeah, to put into your truck.
All right, hey, that's cool. You could put the Stanley Cup in that.
Almost. I mean, it might be. I think there's like a slight height issue.
What if they, when they present the Stanley Cup here in a couple of weeks, they open the case and inside it says Tiffany's and it's scratched off and it says Stanley's?
That's funny. That's great. All the magic you can do with boxes, man.
Yeah. Just ask a 4-year-old.
Just ask a cat.
Boxes are forever.
Boxes rule the world.
Toys are momentary. Boxes are forever.
Speaking of forever, this PWHL off season 2 is going to be bonkers and bananas because the last one was madness, and now there's going to be more madness.
Yeah, they're having the draft in like 3 days or some shit. Like, it's coming up real soon. Free agency is going to start. It's kind of weird that they're echoing the NHL calendar as much as they are. We're going to see some really incredible names come up in PWHL Draft 2. The biggest is Sarah Fillier, who has been killing it in college, has I think 3 world championships already with Team Canada.
Only
is a monster player. Yeah, we'll probably end with like 15. But except, well, no, they'll probably end with 3 because USA #1. But they'll be the #1 pick. But you've also got people like Amanda Kessel, the legend Amanda Kessel, who also gets a hot dog. You've got Claire Thompson, who has, I think, like 4 or 5 world championships with Canada.
I thought you were going to say 4 or 5 hot dogs.
That's me. 4 or 5 hot dogs. Claire Thompson, who is famously putting off med school to play in the PWHL this year.
If I were her, I'd like get one of those like helmet protectors that the NFL players use.
I would be getting a shit ton of insurance.
Yeah. Like, can I insure my medicine career just like a professional athlete would? Because you should be able to do that.
Yeah. There's also a couple of interesting names. Gabby Rosenthal was like a point per game player at Ohio State. The Ohio State. My apologies to the state of Ohio. While there, took a year off last year. Instead of doing the Dream Gap tour, took a gap year. And then Alyssa Wolfire, who had several very productive seasons for the Connecticut Whale, has declared this year for the draft.
Which is kind of funny because she's our age.
Yeah. Well, Alyssa killed it over in Sweden for a couple of years too. Okay. And so her coming over to the PHF, or I think NWHL when she joined, but PHF eventually, was a bit of a coup. It was like one of those first moments where, especially in like the second half of the PHF, when like the big stars, the Hillary Knights, the Kendall Coynes had left the league, like pulling stars from Europe. And that was a big deal. And I think we're going to see more of that this year as well. There are some, a large amount of Czechs who are eligible this year, and there's already a decent number of Czech women in the league. So I think we're going to see them become kind of the #1 pipeline for non-North American players here pretty soon as well.
Those Czechs, don't they know that we're mostly a digital economy?
I didn't see that joke coming. Well played. All right.
Elsewhere in the PWHL, New York has named Greg Fargo their head coach. He comes from Colgate University, where he's been there for the last 12 seasons. And before that, he was the head coach for the women's hockey team at Elmira College. He's got a roughly 2-to-1 win-loss, or for those gamers, kill-death ratio over 500 NCAA Fortnite games.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, sounds pretty qualified.
Yeah, if you can win Fortnite that many times, you're
if you can win twice as many games as you lose, you're a good hockey coach.
Sorry, if you can win Fortnite that many games, oh geez,
you're gonna go to the Hall of Fame.
Gee golly, Evan, when they get around to making the Fortnite /Minecraft / whatever else Hall of Fame, player battlegrounds, undergrounds, This Greg Fargo is a shoe-in.
Yep, always nice to see someone with the last name Fargo in hockey.
Speaking of like not fargoing but foregoing, the TNT may lose their NBA coverage this year,
which is hilarious.
It doesn't impact us NHL fans at all
unless Charles Barkley comes over to cover hockey.
Please God.
I could only imagine.
You and I kind of had a brief chat about this. I've chatted about it with other people. Charles Barkley is the best sports commentator of all time.
Really could be.
And I would take him in any dose with hockey. He did a little bit the first season TNT had games just to kind of like spice it up or whatever. I would fucking love it if Charles Barkley was sitting in on the TNT NHL broadcast. It's
right.
Far superior.
Imagine
as a broadcast.
Imagine a true NHL who he play for with Charles Barkley. Yeah, hilarious. And like also hilarious because TNT essentially cribbed the whole concept for that show for their hockey coverage. And now they're going to lose the original to NBC, who they rightfully dethroned.
Who lost their NHL coverage because it was partly because it was so bad.
Right. It was just boring and kind of
it was so
stuffy,
white and sterile.
Right. And that is the opposite of what TNT brings to the table and part of why it's so damn fun. And they love to just go off the rails and do all sorts of weird, crazy shit. That I would love to see more of from the NHL broadcast. But it is just very funny that the hockey program may be going strong while the stronger NBA program may be lost.
The multi-time Emmy-winning NBA to NBA on TNT program.
Right. Yeah. No good deed goes unpunished.
The Stanley Cup playoffs so far are the most watched through 3 rounds across the United States since 1996, which...
So to all those people who say no one cares about hockey,
fuck the Avs.
You can go straight fuck yourself.
Well, here's the other side of that is Caitlin Clark is outdrawing them by herself.
Yeah. I mean, sure, there's a lot of manufactured controversy around her.
Absolutely. And this is in no way, shape, or form shorting Caitlin Clark.
No,
she's
absolutely
a phenomenal athlete, and any news or like spotlight on women's sports, as long as it's not like, oh, I'd like to bang her, is great. Like focusing on the actual talent of the players is amazing.
Right.
This doesn't quite feel like it. It's like Caitlin Clark versus this week's black girl, and it's really awkward.
Yeah, that part of it is just utter total media failure. Like
every time somebody talks about like somebody like boxes Caitlin Clark out a little bit aggressive, if it's a black girl, they're like, oh my God, what did she do to Caitlin Clark?
Yeah, and fucking Pat McAfee's like on the air with his like fucking leaf blower of a voice, talking about like calling Caitlin Clark white bitch and stuff. And it's like, you all just need to calm the fuck down. She is a small guard that is getting beaten up in her first season, which is coming like mere weeks after she just played an entire NCAA season.
Yeah, it's not like she had an entire offseason to like recover and like build muscle strength. Like,
who were we talking to the other day?
Pat McAfee wears enough tank tops to ruin the world. Like, fuck that guy.
But like Caitlin Clark, you know, Jordan got beat up like that when he was brand new in the league. Yeah. People were just taking shots at the skinny guy. And like, I forget who we were talking to. And it was like, I can't wait till Caitlin Clark shows up next season, just absolutely yoked.
Oh yeah. And like throws an elbow through the face of the first chick who tries to like muscle her.
Right.
And everybody's like, oh,
she gives somebody like the Robert Horry hip check.
The like famously decimated Steve Nash's career.
Yeah. But yeah, it like props to the WNBA, and
100%.
We wish it wasn't coming with all of this cringeworthy, I don't know, side noise To Caitlin Clark's credit, she's taken it all in stride as kind of the world
While she
continues
can
to
still walk.
while the world continues to tune in to see her get done up by like she's playing the fucking bad boy Pistons.
Well, this comes into another conversation, though, is like you have quite possibly the most talented non-Steve Yzerman hockey player of all time playing in a conference final, getting outdrawn by early season basketball games.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether it's men's or women's, that should not happen. If you're the NHL, that's fucking embarrassing. Like you shouldn't, your best talent, probably by a lot. Like I know we can like, oh, Austin Matthews, whatever. Like, no. Connor McDavid is the best player in the NHL, probably by a lot, and is having a killer offseason, or not offseason, killer postseason. Yeah. And your games are getting outdrawn by early season at basketball games.
And I mean,
that sucks.
To their credit, Caitlin Clark is a more interesting individual than Connor McDavid.
Also true.
Like Connor McDavid is he may
milk toast.
Right. He's got like the personality of a bowl of oatmeal.
There is a pretty promising looking docu-series coming out in this fall, I believe, on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
About the NHL, and it sounds like it like closely follows some players, including Pasta, who's awesome.
Oh, okay.
But Connor McDavid is in it as well, and so I'm actually really interested to see like, hey, maybe he cracks a smile. Maybe he tells a joke.
Right.
Maybe he has an opinion.
Right. It, like, to counter with like Leon Draisaitl, who is just spicy all of the time. All the time.
He is an Italian sausage meatball. You bite into it and you're like, oh, that's a spicy meatball. But it's a Leon Draisaitl. I guess maybe like currywurst. I don't know.
But yeah, it's the two best hockey players that happen to play on the same team could not be bigger polar opposites. And like, how is that not a marketing opportunity? You know, yeah, the NHL needs to get its act together. Props to Caitlin Clark for continuing her streak of being incredibly popular into her and WNBA debuts. But, you know, the NHL needs to do better. And also the NHL's media people need to do better. Like,
that's the big thing. Their media people suck.
Well, and also, what's that asshole in New York had something to say about, like, he called Connor McDavid Caitlin Clark as like a pejorative. And it's like,
oh,
that doesn't
something Brown.
No,
Larry Brown.
Yeah. Larry Brooks.
Larry Brooks. Yeah. I'd tuned him out because he sucks.
Right. He, especially amongst
a no talent
New
fuckball.
York writers, sucks. And
well, doesn't he write for the Post? Like, I mean,
yes.
Yeah. Let's say no more.
But yeah, he was like using Connor McDavid and saying like, oh, he was getting preferential treatment from the refs. And it's like, no, he's just faster than everybody else. And
so fucking good.
Like, he's just that good. And also, you don't need to make those fucking comparisons.
Yeah.
Women athletes are not pejoratives for male athletes.
Yeah. Easy there, Don Imus.
Right. Jesus. Yeah. Bring back fucking Mr. Clippers.
Let's talk about the hockey though. So we're in the finals. They start on Saturday the 8th. We're recording this on the 7th. I might have it out before game time tomorrow. Gonna go for it. It's Florida versus Edmonton, which is
awesome.
Equal parts boring and awesome.
I think it's awesome
because like
the two furthest reached geographically teams by virtue of travel.
Yeah, that's Sure, that's fun.
So they're like flying to Europe or Australia every time they go to play each other.
Yeah, it's like 8.5 hours from Miami to or Sunrise to Edmonton, and like 4 billion miles in culture, cultural difference. I'm excited for these finals. I'm going to watch it. Obviously, I was going to watch it regardless of who it was, but the optics of it on paper aren't as good, or the like visual optics of it, like, oh, it's Edmonton versus fucking Florida. Who gives a
weird
shit?
Kittens team?
Like, yeah, who get the Impact Kitties? Yeah, like that looks boring. But then you look at the teams and like you have the best player in all of hockey,
Probably the 2 best players in all of hockey.
yeah, plus a just kind of like hyper skilled but also smash mouth Florida team that has just been built to like maul people in the playoffs.
They will play dirty and sometimes get away with it, sometimes not, but it will always affect you.
Well, it reminds me of when Tampa supersized itself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they had gotten kind of beat up a couple of years in a row, and then they like famously got knocked out in the first round by Columbus, and they were like, you know what? We're gonna make it so you can't play against us. And they got big ass dudes who also had a bunch of talent and won 2 cups and could have won a third. Like and Florida took that. They were like, we're going to take that a little bit south. And not to say like that the high end guys at Tampa are those guys, but the guys that they got on their 3rd and 4th lines, those were the guys that
Pat Maroons.
They made them hard to play against.
Barclay Goodrow,
the Brandon Hagels, yeah. The Barclay Goodrow. Did you say Barclay Goodrow?
I did.
You did? Well, we're gonna say him a third time. Barclay Goodrow. Like they brought those guys in knowing that it would make them hard to play against, and they won 2.5 cups. The Panthers did that as well. They just modified it for the Atlantic coast, and it works. It turns out having a bunch of high skilled guys who can also pummel you is a really good measure of success in the NHL playoffs.
Yeah, fancy how that happens.
Weird,
but also you have some smart trades where you get Tkachuk, who is a huge upgrade over Huberdeau, in terms of everything from scoring to physicality. You've got Sam Bennett for parts and pieces. You got
the guy who made both of those trades now in Toronto,
and you got Reinhart for pretty good value. Like,
oh, absolutely.
The Florida story is just as much about savvy management as it is about the on the ice product. I mean, is Aaron Ekblad who you drafted Aaron Ekblad to be? Maybe not.
Well, he got drafted like 15 years ago.
Right. But he's also churning through huge amounts of minutes. And Gustav Forsling has like come as like a Forsling out of nowhere. He's
for slinging the puck up and down the ice.
Yeah. And how many teams gave up on him, got rid of him for next to nothing, and he's doing a star turn now here as a defenseman. Like,
and now it's what can he do against Connor McDavid?
Yeah, and also what is Evan Bouchard going to do against all of that
meat?
Yeah, meat coming at him at a very high rate of speed. Speaking of meat coming at you, Drake has placed a $500,000 bet on Edmonton to win the series because he just can't be on the right side of anything.
I have a $20 bet on Kendrick Lamar
just to like beat his ass somehow.
Absolutely. Like Kendrick, he just dropped another diss track like 3 days ago.
Like secretly Kendrick has like $3 million on Florida.
As that's probably a safe bet.
He's got another hockey themed diss track just waiting in the wings because of this.
Can't wait for it. It's like the Macho Man Randy Savage had the rap song Hogan's a Bitch on his rap album. You ever heard this?
No.
Oh my God.
I mean, I bet it was playing at Deadspin back in the day.
It's an American classic.
Is it, brother?
Brother. You just do yourself a favor, have some beers and listen to it tonight.
I will.
Bring the family. It's great.
You know who else is having a good time bringing along the family and with good sound bites is Paul Maurice, who has always been good for a quote. But yeah, they, in the media scrums, they're talking with him about taking over this team in Florida that had already had some success under the previous coach. And he said, I showed up here and they had 122 points. I managed to get them down to 92 in 1 year. Brilliance.
Yeah. Paul Maurice has always kind of just been around.
Right.
Like he's obviously doing something right if he's been coaching in the NHL for 30 years. Right. Like that's undeniable. But he was massively underachieving in Winnipeg for a long time.
I mean, also, that's what Winnipeg does to people.
Yeah, but like Nikolai Ehlers should have probably twice as many points as he does in his career. And like Paul Maurice was like, no, sit on the third line, bitch. Like, I want you jamming other opposing third lines. I do appreciate that he also seems very aware of his place in hockey history with like, they're asking him, hey, Paul, do you think you need to win a cup to kind of cement your legacy? He's like, yeah, I need to win one. Yeah, I definitely need to win one.
He knows what it's going to take to get him out of that Hall of Very Good.
Yeah. I mean, Chris Osgood won 3 and he's in the Hall of Very Good. So
nobody wants to be in Hockey Hall of Fame purgatory. So yeah, I'm kind of pulling for Florida, even though like I want Connor McDavid to get one, and it sounds like Vegas is along my side, but I don't know. If the Oilers won, I would also be very happy. I think that would be good for the game. Have another first overall pick pan out with a Stanley Cup. Like, yes, that's good. It kind of shows that tanking works, unfortunately, but
well, all those other first overall picks worked out real well in Edmonton.
Yeah, true. I mean, what is this like? Swing at it number 5 behind like Taylor Hall, Nail Yakupov, and
I'm with you. Like, I honestly don't care who wins. The only thing I have going for me is in the years that we've been doing this podcast, I have routinely made jokes about Canadian teams never winning the cup. And if Edmonton wins, that is over.
Correct.
And that would be, I'd actually have to try and be funny. That joke just kind of writes itself, and then I'd have to maybe even write some real jokes, and I'm not looking forward to it.
You know what is a real joke is the hats that Fanatics came out with, just because like A, they cannot do a single thing right, and B, these are awful. Just like it looks like they already had them printed and then they just like ironed on the two teams' logos, and it's like mishmashed, low quality design, just so obvious.
I don't think that Fanatics actually has the infrastructure to put out good product.
Right. I think it's just a skin over Temu.
Yeah, their whole thing is we make shitty things, but we have the financial backing to somehow scam our way into making MLB and I think NHL jerseys starting next year. Like nothing they make is like there's a lot of talk in like the fashion world about sustainability and, building products that will last. And like you buy a pair of Levi's, quote unquote, blah, 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 they'll last for years or whatever.
Oh, hell no, not anymore.
Not anymore. Right. But like Fanatics is legitimately on the throwaway end of fashion. Like,
right. They'll sustainably like show you baseball players' dick and balls.
And immediately, like you buy a shirt, you wear it 3 times and you've washed it and you're like, well, fuck, this has got to go thrown away.
That is if you are sent the right thing in the first place, because they send people just like the wrong player, the wrong team, fucked up logos, all the time.
Yeah, it is a calamity of colossal proportions that this company has been allowed to infiltrate like this marketplace, despite being absolutely horrific at what they do.
Yeah, a true, just amazing, like late capitalist age story. It's like they have failed upwards into a monopoly.
They like congrats, Enron, like you've made it.
Yeah, congrats, Evil Corp.
That Enron joke really puts me at an age where I
it
feel
does.
I say something at least every episode where I feel really old.
Mm-hmm. Of 11 teams in the expansion era to return to the Cup final after losing the year prior, as Florida is doing, only 2 have won. So that's not looking good in their favor.
If I were a non-Drake betting man, I'd probably put money on the Panthers. I'm not going to. I don't need addiction counseling on top of my mental health therapy. So like I don't place bets.
Yeah, I'm not trying to pick up more addictions.
Since we have reached the Stanley Cup Finals, we are also, that means closing in on the off season, which, you know, for every team not in the finals has started to kind of swing into, you know, full on gallop mode. Yeah, it's gallop mode, and the galloping will then get into rocket cars as the draft approaches.
I mean, there's going to be a lot of galloping happening at the draft combine this week. I don't know if you've looked into some of the exercises that these kids are going to be doing. They're going to be bench pressing while sexting.
What about drunkenly carrying a Russian hooker up to your hotel room and then being absconded by the police?
Or your own team's police.
Yeah.
No, that's an advanced exercise. They don't get into that until off-season training.
Okay.
There's going to be the shuttle run for beers,
which none of these kids can successfully buy, but have been able to somehow abscond with for the last like 3 years in their WHL towns.
There's going to be VO2 max while getting yelled at by your coach testing.
Featuring Mike Babcock.
That's what they're bringing him back for. And then grip strength for how well you can hold a video game controller.
Patrick Laine is the record holder for this. In seriousness, Carolina is asking apparently for a mid-round pick for the rights to try and sign Jake Gensel, who has like already openly opined for free agency.
Yeah, and I mean, he's 30. He's probably signing his last big deal. Rumor is that he wants something in like the 4 to 6 year range. He's probably taking it while Joe Pavelski's retiring for a reason. Like, hey, look what this guy can do. I can do that too.
Look what Gordie Howe did. I can do that too. Except not until I'm 60. I don't want to be playing hockey when I'm 60.
And I mean, Carolina is probably right to just realize, hey, we can't keep this guy. Let's get some value for him.
That makes me think that because they had been negotiating in contracts, it makes me think that the numbers are just not palatable to Carolina.
It also sounds like that's not a term that Carolina would typically pay for. On the other hand, it sounds like they're reportedly hanging on to Marty Necas like they're Charlton Heston hanging on to a gun. And they're only entertaining like more than a first and a top prospect for the rights to sign him, as they are trying to sign him and think he's something of a budding star.
The Red Wings can give up this year's first, Jonathan Berggren, and like one of their defenders, and I'll be happy as a fucking clam to bring in Marty Necas. I think he's probably a 40 goal scorer moving forward.
Yeah, it sounds like he's likely to re-sign there, but who knows? Speaking of curious signings, Valeri Nichushkin, who we just mentioned, reportedly has signed a contract.
Ostensibly.
Yeah, reportedly has signed a contract to play in the totally not fake sounding Media Hockey League in Russia. Like, hey, Russian Hockey League, we have cameras. Did we tell you we have cameras? It's the Media League.
This one has cameras.
Like, imagine like the Media League would be like in Canada would be like Elliot Friedman and on a team versus like the Toronto Media. what's funny about this Valeri Nichushkin news is it may or may not violate his NHL contract, which, remember, he is also currently undergoing substance abuse treatment, allegedly, which he's totally doing in Russia. I don't know. If you think that rules are the kinds of things that stop this guy, well, he's full of surprises.
He will prove you wrong.
He will prove you wrong.
We've heard that the Ducks are open to listening to offers for Trevor Zegras. The Devils are open to trading their number 10 pick. Just like all of last season, they are looking for a goalie.
Yeah, we need goalie bad. Like, they might as well just put like Craigslist signs up saying wanted NHL goalie.
You can't get it on one of those free buy it or free cycle websites. I think it's kind of curious that Zegras is back on the block just because he really changed his game this year. Like, they asked him to be more responsible defensively, and he sort of did. He didn't produce at a great rate. I would say that was like a good rate, but he also didn't give us any kind of ridiculous highlight reels. And I don't know, maybe that's what would keep him in LA. Yeah. When you have a player whose game is marked around doing the fancy stuff and you ask him to be defensively responsible, and he's been doing the fancy stuff for the better part of his life, you can't expect him to be back at like a 60 plus point guy right away when you're asking him to play a full 200 foot game.
Mm-hmm. Elsewhere in contract news, the Kings and RFA Akil Thomas have agreed to a 2-year deal. The second of the deal is a one-way deal, and this is great news. It sounds like a young forward is finally making his way into the league full-time, and that's awesome for Akil Thomas. He's someone that we've kind of paid attention to on and off here. The Canucks, on the other hand, have a lot in their hands to deal with. They have negotiations that are active with Zadorov, Elias Lindholm, Tyler Myers, amongst other players. And Ian Cole will reportedly test the open market. So hide your wife.
I know she did it to herself, but I'm always just still really sad that Abby Labar got caught up in that, because she was actually really great on Carolina broadcasts.
Yeah, I mean, she's still really great and still really gorgeous, but yeah, that was a thing, and I don't know. I think Ian Cole needs to wear it more than she does.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So Utah is still a thing. They haven't gone away. In fact, they are the ones that are appearing and not going away. They held a kind of competition to name their next franchise. Now,
yeah, and they're on to the second round.
Whenever this happens, the team names are never good.
Right. McTeam face.
Yeah. There was I think 500 and some thousand people voted for this, which is actually pretty incredible. Amongst the teams, or amongst the names that have made the cut, the Mammoth, also known as the Big Black Hawks,
not the Chicago Blackhawks.
It's just gonna be like a picture of a forearm, and on the side it's gonna say it's a metaphor.
And it's kind of funny. Like, a lot of the hockey commentators don't like the singular, whereas I don't know, maybe we're, as like elder millennials, the singular, we're just so used to it that it seems okay.
I think it goes against the normal like forming of words as you're you're saying the team name, and you're like the Red Wings, the Panthers, the Ducks, the Yeti.
I mean, yeah. Yetis, I think, is plural for Yeti, which...
Yeti.
Yeti. That would be awesome.
2 eyes.
Mammoth sounds like it could be sort of a weird self-plural, but it's mammoths. And that like gets awkward real fast.
The mammoth eye. The Venom, which sucks.
The Utah Tom Hardys.
The Utah bewildering team names.
Utah HC, which, okay, we're just going to ignore it.
AKA BBCHC when it's the Mammoth. The Outlaws, which is like, there's so many Mormon jokes, but I feel like we already made all the Mormon jokes.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Blizzard.
Which, I mean, you know, for the video game fans amongst us, that could be perfect if the entire team is really into World of Warcraft.
It's King Gizzard and the Blizzard Wizard is actually the team name.
I love it. Let's just go with that. Do you have a preference out of these?
For comedic purposes, and for the purposes of this here podcast, Mammoth is great. Like,
I think Mammoth logos will be dope. Yeti, meh.
Yeah. Yeti sucks.
Right? Like, it's like my least favorite brand of cooler.
How many like coolers can you like fit?
Right.
If Yeti is okay, we have like a weird kind of picture in a picture where their jerseys say Yeti, and then in the top corner they're sponsored by Yeti.
Mm-hmm. But yet they lift a Stanley.
I tried to Evan Stravers with the jokes today. Utah HC sucks. Outlaws sucks. There's more Outlaws in fucking Kansas than there are in Utah.
Venom is only good if you give Tom Hardy full creative control.
Yeah, and so all of these suck, but Mammoth is my vote.
Yeah, Mammoth, and then like Blizzard sort of second, I guess.
It's too close to Avalanche.
That's true. Avalanche versus the Blizzard. It's like ski instructors hate this game.
They're doing an outdoor game in fucking Antarctica.
Yeah, I for
the
ski references,
Dolomites.
Right, for ski references, I was always in on the Black Diamonds, but that did not make the cut. What is making the cut is 34,000 and counting season ticket deposits for Utah. Looking at the bowl structure, it is passed to the left first. No, it is the most expensive season tickets at the lower bowl are $10,000 for the full season. And their upper bowl gets as cheap as like $3,000 for the full season. So these are going to be relatively accessible games, at least it seems like, until the shit hits the secondary market like it did in Seattle.
Oh yeah, the Seattle prices
that was stupid,
astronomical, and that's something that's entirely avoidable.
I mean, it's not necessarily super avoidable with a new team in a market that is like 15% millionaires.
Hey, you shut it down.
Yeah, you shut it down to everyone from all the rich parts of town.
Yes,
because those people don't like hockey.
No, not at all. If we've learned anything, it's definitely that rich white people do not like hockey. It's the sport of the people. This is a proletariat sport.
But it's nice to see Utah get this kind of action when the rink situation is maybe not ideal. There's some sightline issues. It sounds like only maybe 10,000 of these seats may actually be able to see the game. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
But we'll see how it goes. The proof is always going to be in the pudding when the puck drops and people actually want to watch the game. And I'm sure we'll see some complaints at that point, but they all know that this is a temporary stadium.
If a Clayton Keller falls on the ice in a Utah stadium and nobody's able to see it, does it really happen?
No, but I bet it's epic.
There will be Arizona State co-eds crying everywhere.
USA Hockey has announced that they're allegedly going to change the process with which they train goalies. Allegedly they will no longer be castrating them shortly after birth.
Eunuch goalies, no longer acceptable.
Yeah, tough for eunuch goalies everywhere.
I think they could probably find some places over in, say, like ancient Greece or the Roman Republic.
You can do the Star Spangled Banner, and then you can play goalie.
in a nice falsetto.
Mm-hmm.
While so you may not know this, but we just came back from a break to rest the vocal cords. I think by the end of most episodes, I sound slightly more hoarse than I did at the start of the episode.
I think my curve is the opposite. I think I sound hoarse at the end or at the beginning and then like get better.
Huh. Well, I mean, that means one of us is always mediocre. There's a spot in the middle of the episode where we're both at prime voice level.
Just
and
perfectly mid.
Just like ships passing in the night.
Speaking of perfectly mid.
Yeah. So we talked earlier in the episode about the ousting of Natalie Darwitz from the Minnesota PWHL team.
This is actually not perfectly mid. This is some juicy palace intrigue.
Yeah. And, we had read a couple articles in The Athletic and an article. There was one in the Minnesota Star Tribune, which is colloquially known as the Strib.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. I found that out today.
From whomst?
Comment sections on the Athletic article.
The
multiple
Strib?
people called it Strib. Star Tribune, Strib.
I will investigate. We'll get back to
the Detroit
We're
Free
gonna go
Press. Detroit Free Press is the Freep, but that is way better than Strib.
I mean, Chicago is always the Trib.
Yeah,
so Strib is such an easy. Yeah. I believe it, but I'm surprised that in all my years of coming and going through Minnesota so often and reading the Star Tribune on my aunt and uncle's shitter a lot because they post it there. It's great. It's perfect. Like they change it out every day and it's like on a clothes hamper. And it's a good newspaper.
Yeah, we have the Times, the Post, the Trib, and the Strib. It's so bad.
Shout out to all you stribbers out there.
Everyone loves a good stribber. So
stribbing is hard work.
Hey, you know what? You got to be athletic to strib. So the Star Tribune first kind of reported that this was due to maybe some consternation between Ken Klee, Kendall Coyne-Schofield on one side and Natalie Darwitz on the other. Ian Kennedy in the Hockey News is also stating that Charlie Burgraff, who was the original head coach of the Minnesota PWHL team.
They got rid of one already. I forgot about that.
Fired him right before the season and replaced him at the behest of Kendall Coyne-Schofield and other players with Ken Klee. And so now KCS and KK have kicked Natalie Darwitz, who built this fucker, to the curb. And so, we have heard of, inmates running the asylum, of star players getting, having an immense amount of authority and say in team decisions. We kind of heard about this, Giannis bringing the Greek Freak, trying to bring in a better point guard and them getting Damian Lillard. And
I mean, in basketball, this shit happens all the time. With coaches and GMs, but it's pretty rare in hockey. It's just because hockey is so rare in hockey, so culturally
deficient. I mean, team focused.
I don't know. So give me more of this PWHL drama.
This is some juicy bits. Thank you, Ian Kennedy of the Hockey News.
Yeah, I love it.
Ian Kennedy is probably the number one enemy of sports bros everywhere because he has the audacity to write about women's sports with the same enthusiasm that people write about men's sports. And every one of his articles has 35 comments and 34 of them are you're a fucking pussy, bro. It's the saddest fucking thing on the internet. So yeah, that article dropped about an hour ago, as of us recording. So
turns out that
6 o'clock-ish Pacific time.
Turns out that Natalie Darwitz just had a penchant for microwaving fish in the break room.
That is a fireable offense.
It truly is. That one way to get your coworkers to just nuke you.
Yeah. Like you nuked your fish. Yeah.
There's going to be a new 3-on-3 league, allegedly, called Major League Hockey. If you think about it, it's overtime all the time.
Is it going to suck as bad as NHL overtime?
Yeah, I don't know. There was a 3-on-3 hockey league that's been bouncing around for a little while. It was called Thrice or Three Ice, which was also just a hilariously silly name.
It's right up there with Strib.
Right. I imagine they played a lot of the band Thrice. There's not much information available because all of the players that inquire or have agents inquire, they have to sign NDAs, which that's also a conspicuous, but I guess understandable sign when you're trying to set things up behind the scenes and not really rock the boat too much. But allegedly, at least one NHL player currently entering the finals has inquired.
There's also, of course, rumors that it's funded by the Saudis.
Yeah.
So
that's the other thing is they're totally no, we're totally not funded by the Saudis.
Well, if there was ever a chance for the Saudis to whitewash their money, it would be with the whitest sport on the planet in hockey.
Well, and allegedly the funding is coming from a European conglomerate. But that's also where half the Saudi money is anyways. So, that could not really mean much. What also could not really mean much is they have a big salary cap. That's one of their marketing aspects. But there's not a floor.
14 players, 30 million salary cap. That's $2 million a dude.
Sure. And I think it's a pretty short league. I'm curious. I've always been curious, what these guys get paid for Debuty League, but this sort of reminds me of Debuty League. And so I would say if they make it worth the cost of tickets for a fun niche hockey experience, hell yeah. That'd be great. The one thing that they could have that Debuty League doesn't have is beer, because Debuty League plays in high school stadiums. So I don't know. I think there's maybe a market for this, depending on how they do the rules. I would almost lean into the wackiness. Can we get power-ups?
If it's NBA Jam style, which I just learned this the other day, there's an NBA Jam reboot coming out. It's called NBA Showtime or something like that.
Really?
It's an arcade game only.
Okay.
It's not going to be on, at least for now, on consoles and whatever, but is your boy going to ground control as soon as he hears this is out? Yup.
Absolutely. I've always imagined a roller hockey video game, but a pro beach hockey video game.
Absolutely. Can you imagine the gravity effects on the curved walls?
Oh, hell yes. And you can power up by doing blow at halftime.
Boop, 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 boop.
Yeah.
Can you remember, do you remember when the Houston Astros center field had an incline in it?
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, the guy who at the time either owned or was a big part of the ownership group of the Astros was a Michigan State grad, and he gave a bunch of money to Michigan State to renovate their baseball stadium, but only if it would also have that incline in center field. This was probably 20 years ago, but still
he fell
really
in love,
stupid.
Fell in love with the idea reportedly while looking at pictures of a Russian aircraft carrier.
Better than falling in love with a stribber.
So yeah, allegedly this also, the name is hilarious. Major League Hockey.
Where have we heard this before?
Major League. One of my favorite sports movies.
The movies Major League Baseball, Major League Soccer, Major League the fuck. This is Major League Stribbing.
I would die. That should be a thing. But this, like, that's maybe the one thing I think they're like really getting wrong. And also they're doing the weird thing where they're saying we're looking at 16 markets. So that's saying like, yeah, I'm looking at 16 different computers.
Yeah. Have you narrowed it down yet? Nah.
Yeah. I'm looking at 16 different
why not,
cars.
like, honestly, why not just like for the first season, put it all in one city? And
sounds
go
like they're
fucking wild with it.
Sounds like they're ready to travel, but yeah, I don't know why I wouldn't do like what the PWHL has done and like base it really in the Northeast in Canada, or I don't know, put it in the Midwest. Fuck it.
I'm reading the Sportsnet article on this, and the first comment is, "This is great news. A hockey league putting teams in Canada while the NHL continues to prefer every backwater American town instead. I'm in." Have you seen where fucking teams are in the NHL in Canada, bud?
Yeah.
You think fucking Winnipeg is in a backwater town?
And the other thing is, like, they all have their fandoms already, and Canada is not really known for embracing novel hockey concepts,
or
like,
like
passing the puck, like, or like the drop on a power play.
Everything's end to end,
right?
Yeah. Honestly, like it's a weird time for this to start because the NHL is already talking about how boring 3-on-3 hockey has become. And about like making alterations or phasing it out into like a 4-on-4 or like making massive rule changes to it.
And I kind of don't subscribe to that a whole lot. I find 3-on-3 hockey actually interesting.
I think as a concept, it's fascinating. As it has played out in the NHL, it's boring.
I think there's some pretty
It's
this
5-minute
good
keep away.
Yeah, right. This is good off-season content, but like I think there are some minor rule changes you can do to change it a little bit without hamstringing things too bad. But that's a subject for another day. I totally think that the player in the NHL Finals that has inquired was like a drunk Corey Perry. Just like, yo, okay, come on, tell me about it. Tell me what's up.
Can I make more than I make now? Yes.
Is he veteran minimum? What is he?
Oh, well, he's getting paid whatever they paid him, and they paid him a lot in Chicago because they had to move the cap floor.
But they canceled it.
Oh, that's right. His canceled.
Like this is not like he got traded or like his contract.
So yeah,
got axed.
I'm pretty sure he's league minimum.
I think he's probably vet minimum, if not maybe like shortly above that as like a sweetener. Weirder still about this 3-versus-3 hockey is they've already completed their draft in secret, like of all, I guess, eligible professional players and all eligible amateurs and quasi-professionals. It smacks of like the Mormons posthumously like baptizing people or like baptizing people from a distance in secret.
I'm happy to announce that our own Evan Stravers was taken in the 4th round.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's not
Big
that
leaks.
secret.
Ooh,
yeah.
Coley and Kennedy.
I'm basically a WikiLeaks of the 3-on-3 hockey league, the Major League Hockey. The Premier Hockey League, Major League Federation Hockey League.
If it can manage to be half as entertaining as the movie Major League, it'll be good.
Major League 1 or Major League 2? Because I think Major League 2 is actually about half as entertaining as the initial Major League.
I don't recognize its existence.
It's bad.
But the first one, man, fuck you, Jobu.
Yeah.
I do it myself. Like, one of the most optimistic lines I think about, like, when I'm like trying to engage in like positive thinking, that sometimes pops into my head.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I don't need this religious talisman anymore. I'm fine.
Major League 2 ups the racism quite a bit by bringing an Asian player in and making him like extremely stereotypically Asian. But there is one great moment where he spends the season talking about how Benito Serrano, I think Serrano is his last name. I can't remember his first name in the movies.
Okay.
But the guy who loves Jobu has no marbles, and he like hits a home run and goes around the bases going, no marbles, no marbles. And then Serrano hits a home run later and does the same dance, and he's like basically mimicking bouncing testicles while running around the bases. That's good. The rest of that movie is terrible. Oh,
yeah, because Major League One kind of like acknowledges the racism and like this is a thing that goes on in its own way. But yeah, I don't know. I could see that really going awry in a sequel too.
Yeah, and then it does have Randy Quaid heckling from the outfield stands, which is pretty good.
That's good. That's a quality cameo. Speaking of cameos, ESPN has decided to bestow the Bestower of Leadership Awards himself with a multi-year contract extension. Yes, that's Mark Messier, going to be sticking around broadcasts near you for quite a while he dispels awards for flying into boards.
My brother and I called Mark Messier Mark Messy Pants when we were young.
Dude, I mean, he may be wearing a diaper. We don't know. He looks like he could be.
This just further cements ESPN's NHL broadcast in the I'm half asleep category of sports coverage. Like with TNT, you get to intermission and you watch. With ESPN, I go, yeah, I'm good. And I mute the television and like play Clash of Clans on my phone while I'm waiting for the game to start back up. Like, it's so fucking boring.
I mean, it seems like they're trying. They did get rid of Chris Chelios's ghost.
Yeah, they brought in PK Subban. They should probably bring in Malika Subban.
I was going to say, she looks so good doing PWHL coverage because she's really good.
She has real presence.
Yeah. Give her more work elsewhere in hockey, please, somehow. And they did kind of let PK run and do kind of weird PK things. Like, it's kind of funny how the managers of the ESPN broadcast have to, like, they're sort of thinking like hockey coaches with PK Subban, like, okay, are we going to let him just do his weird ass shit again?
It's like they're deferring.
They are
to their, and Mark Messier is like this kind of boring ass dude.
Mm-hmm. You can't get him out of his chair.
Who talks about leadership. And then, but you have PK who will do just about whatever the fuck he wants and is pretty good at it. Like, honestly, I think he'd be at home on the TNT broadcast. He's pretty solid.
Well, and I think like Messier's not awful. And I see like he's got the credibility. He's kind of their version of Gretzky, in that panel. They need another kind of bridge guy. They need a broadcasting version of Brandon Hagel.
They need an Anson Carter. And Anson Carter is the guy who carries the torch between Gretzky and Bissonnette. Like, he's engaging, right. He's got a sense of humor, but he's also got a shit ton of hockey knowledge.
Right. If Messier, or I mean, like, it's like Messier's like a stodgy forward and PK's his defenseman. His same defenseman self, and they need like a swing center to like really tie them together, tie the room together.
Not a swinging center like PK's ex-girlfriend, but like a swing center. That sounds like an awful joke, but it's actually not.
I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, well, like somebody will listen to that and be like, "Oh my god, that's so derogatory," but it's actual. Anyways, find us on the internets all over the place. We are at handsomehockey.com, Handsome Hockey Podcast on Instagram, Handsome Hockey on Threads, at Handsome Hockey on Twitter is where Evan does most of his damage.
I should probably do some more damage.
handsomehockeypod@gmail.com, Handsome Hockey Facebook page, and a YouTube page.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, my grandma once asked me, I have a YouTube, and I can't say YouTube without saying YouTube anymore. My granny like does not have much of a like thick Midwestern accent, but she said YouTube, like YouTube, and I was like, oh my god, this is the cutest thing ever.
Yeah, it reveals itself at some of the most curious points.
Yeah, like when I say Chicago on accident. Thanks for listening to us, everybody. Have a great Stanley Cup Finals. Have a great PWHL draft. And stay handsome, everybody.
Restez beau, tous les mondes.